When Lena signed the papers, the man behind the desk tried to hide his smile. He slid the receipt across like it was a joke, not a deal. Outside, the yard smelled like old metal and hot dust. Rows of shipping containers sat like tired giants, stacked and scratched, their paint burned by years of sun. Some were clean and straight. Some were dented, leaning, and patched. Lena's container was the worst one. It was long, crooked at one corner, and covered in rust like it had caught a sickness. A faded number was painted on the side, and half the letters were missing. The doors were stiff, and the lock looked like it had not moved in a decade. The yard worker, a tall man with a cap pulled low, tapped the metal with his knuckles. "This one?" he asked. His tone made it sound like Lena had pointed at a broken chair in a fancy store. "Yes," Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. He laughed once, not loud, but enough for two other workers to glance over. One of them raised his eyebrows like, "Are you serious?" Lena felt the heat crawl up her neck. She held her phone tighter, the screen showing her bank balance. It was not much, and it was shrinking every week. Behind her, her son Sammy stood with a small backpack on his shoulders. He was 9, thin, and quiet in a way that made Lena's heart ache. He did not ask for toys. He did not complain. He watched everything like he was learning how the world worked, and today, he was watching how people looked at his mother. The worker kicked at a patch of rust near the bottom. "Ma'am, I'm not saying you can't buy it," he said. "But you can't live in this. Not unless you like sleeping with spiders and rain." Lena nodded like she agreed with him. Like she also thought it was a terrible choice. But she had already made the choice a month ago, when her landlord told her the rent was going up again. When Lena asked for time, he shrugged and said, "That's the market." When she looked for a cheaper place, every door she knocked on felt locked before she even spoke. Small apartment, big deposit. Small room, big rules. No kids. No late payments. No excuses. Lena had one job at a bakery in the morning and a cleaning shift at night. She had no family nearby. Her friends were busy surviving their own lives. And she had promised Sammy something she did not know how to give. A home that would not disappear. A place where they could stay. So she bought a container. Not because it was easy, but because it was hers. The worker waved toward the far end of the yard where a forklift waited. "If you want it delivered, we can drop it where you tell us," he said. "But you'll need a solid base. And I'm telling you, that corner? It's bent. Doors might never close right. Deliver it to the lot on River Road," Lena said. "River Road." The man squinted. "That empty land with the weeds?" "Yes." He stared at her again, then shrugged. "All right," he said, like he had stopped caring. "Your mistake." Lena did not answer. She signed the last form, and the ink felt heavy in her hand. As they walked back to the car, Sammy looked up at her. "Mom," he said softly, "are we really going to live in that?" "We're going to build something," Lena replied. He blinked, confused. "Like a house." "Like our house," she corrected. Sammy looked back at the container one more time. The rust made it look old, tired, and unwanted. Like something people threw away. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, and Lena heard something in that word. Not excitement, not belief, but trust. That trust sat on Lena's shoulders like a weight and a gift at the same time. That afternoon, Lena drove to the lot. River Road was not really a road. It was a rough strip of gravel that led past fields and a few tired houses. The land she bought was cheap because nobody wanted it. A small rectangle near a slope, with tall weeds, uneven ground, and no water line connected yet. The only good thing was the view. At the top of the slope, the sky opened wide, and on clear days, Lena could see the far hills like a calm promise. Sammy ran ahead, swinging a stick through the weeds like a brave explorer. Lena stepped out of the car and breathed in. The air smelled like grass and dust. There was nothing here. But there was also no landlord. No footsteps above them, no angry knocks, No fear of the next letter under the door. Lena walked the edge of the lot, imagining where the container would sit. She imagined a small porch. A window cut into the side. Light inside. A table. A bed. A place for Sammy to do homework without balancing a notebook on his knees. Her phone buzzed. A message from her coworker at the bakery. Heard you bought a container? Girl, you okay? Lena stared at the screen. Another message came right after it. People are talking. Just saying. Be careful. Lena swallowed hard. She did not reply. She put the phone in her pocket and stared at the empty land again. People talking was nothing new. When Lena got pregnant at 19, people talked. When the father disappeared, people talked. When Lena worked 2 jobs, people talked like she was doing something wrong instead of something necessary. Let them talk, she told herself. They were not the ones trying to keep a child warm. The next morning, Lena borrowed a shovel from an old neighbor named Mr. Qasim. He was a retired mechanic with thick hands and a quiet face. What you digging for? He asked, leaning on his fence. A base, Lena said. For a container. He frowned. A container? Yes. His eyes moved to Sammy, who stood behind Lena holding a bottle of water. Sammy's cheeks were flushed from the sun already. Mr. Qasim's face softened a little. That's a hard job, he said. I know, Lena replied. He studied her for a moment, then walked back inside. Lena expected him to return with advice or a lecture. Instead, he came back with a bundle of wooden stakes and a roll of string. You're going to need level lines, he said, handing them to her. Otherwise, it'll sit crooked. Lena's eyes widened. Thank you. He shrugged like it was nothing. I don't like seeing kids struggle. Start there. He pointed to a spot near the center of the lot. Grounds a little higher. Lena wanted to say something more, something that matched the relief she felt. But her throat was tight, so she just nodded. That day, Lena and Sammy cleared weeds and rocks. Sammy complained once, then stopped when he saw Lena's hands blistering. Lena worked like she was chasing a moving train. She could not afford to be slow. A few days later, the delivery truck arrived. It was loud, heavy, and dramatic. It felt like the whole area woke up to watch. 2 men drove it, and a third operated the crane. The container swung through the air like a huge rusty coffin. Neighbors appeared like shadows. Some stood at a distance, pretending they were just outside for fresh air. A few parked their cars nearby and watched openly. Lena heard whispers, small laughs, phones recording. One woman in a bright scarf leaned toward another and said loudly enough for Lena to hear, "Maybe she thinks she's building a castle." The other woman snorted. Lena's stomach twisted. She kept her face calm and her eyes on the ground where the container would land. Sammy stood close to her, jaw tight. The crane lowered the container onto the rough base Lena had prepared with gravel and packed soil. It hit the ground with a deep, heavy sound that seemed to shake the air. When the men finished, the driver wiped sweat from his forehead and glanced at Lena. "You sure about this?" he asked. Not cruelly but honestly. Lena looked at the container. Up close, it was even worse. Rust flaked off like dead leaves. The corner dent made it look like it had been punched. But it was there. It was real. "It's mine," Lena said. The driver nodded slowly, then climbed back into the truck. As the truck drove away, the neighbors drifted off too, disappointed that nothing dramatic happened. No collapse. No disaster. Just a woman and her kids standing next to a rusty box. When the lot was quiet again, Sammy stepped forward and touched the side of the container with his palm. "It's huge," he said. Lena smiled, tired but real. "It is." He looked up at her. "When can we go inside?" Lena walked to the doors. She grabbed the metal handles and pulled. The door did not move. She tried again, harder. Nothing. Sammy frowned. "It's stuck." Lena's hands slipped on the hot metal. She tried to twist the handle, but it felt like fighting a frozen joint. Then Mr. Qasim appeared from across the road, carrying a small toolbox. He walked up without a word, knelt near the lock, and sprayed something on it. He waited, then hit it with a hammer in a careful way, like he knew exactly where metal wanted to move. Finally he pulled, and the door groaned open. A smell rushed out. Dust, old cargo, damp metal. Lena covered her nose. Sammy coughed. Inside, it was dark. The floor was stained. The walls had scratches and marks like history written in ugly lines. Sammy peered in like he expected a monster. Lena stepped inside first. The heat trapped inside wrapped around her like a blanket. She could hear her own breath. For a second, she felt fear. What was she doing? How could this become a home? Then she imagined it again. Not as it was, but as it could be. Light through a window. Clean walls. A small kitchen. A corner for Sammy. She turned back to Sammy and held out her hand. "It's empty," she said. "That means we can fill it with our life." Sammy hesitated, then stepped in. His shoes made a small echo on the metal floor. He walked deeper, eyes wide. Then he turned around and smiled, just a little. "Can my bed be over there?" he asked, pointing to the far corner. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes," she said. "Your bed can be wherever you want." Outside, Mr. Qasim watched quietly. He did not smile, but his eyes were kind. "You got a plan?" he asked Lena. Lena looked around the inside of the container again. She had sketches in her notebook. Ideas from videos she watched late at night. Lists of materials and prices. But a plan and a real build were different things. "I have a start," Lena admitted. Mr. Qasim nodded. "Start is enough. But you'll need wiring, insulation, windows, vent, and a way to keep it from turning into an oven." Lena exhaled. "I know." He looked at Sammy. "Kid, you ready to work?" Sammy stood taller. "Yes." Mr. Qasim grunted like that answer pleased him. "Good. Tomorrow, we begin with cleaning. Then measuring. No building without measuring. That's how people waste money." Lena blinked. "You're going to help?" Mr. Qasim shrugged again. "I'm old. I get bored. Better than watching TV all day." Lena's eyes stung. "Thank you," she whispered. He waved it away and walked out. That night, Lena and Sammy sat in their small rented room, surrounded by boxes they could not unpack because they might move again. Sammy drew a picture on a scrap paper. A rectangle with a roof, a door, and a small porch. A sun in the corner. 2 stick figures standing in front, smiling. He handed it to Lena. "This is our house," he said. Lena stared at it for a long time. The drawing was simple, but it felt like a promise. She pinned it to the wall with tape. Then she opened her notebook and wrote the first real list. Day 1, clean container. Day 2, measure and mark. Day 3, find cheap insulation. Day 4, ask about power connection. Day 5, look for used windows. Her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. "Heard about your container. Don't embarrass your kid." Lena froze. Her fingers tightened. Sammy was brushing his teeth in the corner, humming quietly, unaware. Lena stared at the message until the words blurred. Then she deleted it. She turned off her phone. And she kept writing. Because Lena did not just buy a container. She bought a chance. And somewhere deep inside that rusty metal box, buried under grime and silence, was the beginning of something nobody in that town was ready to understand yet. When Lena finally lay down to sleep, she thought about the neighbors laughing, the whispers, the looks. Then she thought about 1 year. 1 year was a long time. 1 year was enough to change everything. And Lena knew something they didn't. The people who laughed were looking at rust. But Lena was looking at the future. The next morning, Lena woke before the alarm. The sky outside their rented room was still dark, but her mind was already at River Road. She packed a bag with gloves, a tape measure, and 2 bottles of water. Sammy ate a banana in silence and pulled on his old sneakers without being asked. When they reached the lot, the container stood there like a stubborn challenge. In early light it looked even rougher, like the rust had grown overnight. The weeds around it had been trampled during delivery, but the land still felt wild and unfinished. Mr. Qasim arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a broom, a bucket, and a serious face. "First rule," he said, pointing at the container door, "open it every day. Let air move. Metal holds bad smell and heat." He pushed the door wide. A gust of dusty air rolled out. Sammy wrinkled his nose. "It still smells." "It will," Mr. Qasim said, "until we make it stop." They started cleaning. Lena scrubbed the floor with soap and hot water from a thermos. Sammy swept dirt into piles. Mr. Qasim scraped old sticky marks off the walls with a flat tool. The work was slow, and it was not the exciting kind that turns into progress fast. It was the kind that tests patience. But by noon, the floor looked less like a shipping yard and more like a blank space. Lena stepped back, exhausted. For the first time, the container did not feel like an insult. It felt like a room. Mr. Qasim handed her the tape measure. "Now we measure," he said. "And we plan where everything goes." Lena opened her notebook. Her sketches were messy, but her ideas were clear. A small bedroom corner for Sammy, a narrow kitchen line, a foldable table, shelves, a bathroom space with a shower. She did not need luxury. She needed dignity. Mr. Qasim frowned at her drawing. "Bathroom inside?" "Yes," Lena said firmly. "I can't make my son run outside at night." Mr. Qasim looked at Sammy, then nodded. "Okay. But you'll need plumbing. That costs." Lena swallowed. "I know." They marked lines on the floor with chalk. Mr. Qasim explained how to create a frame inside the container so insulation could fit. He spoke in short sentences, like each word cost money. "Steel sweats," he said, tapping the wall. "Cold outside, warm inside, water forms. Water ruins things. Insulation and vapor barrier. Or you build a mold box." Lena wrote everything down. That evening, when Lena returned to work at the bakery, her arms felt like stone. She smiled at customers while her hands still smelled like metal. Her manager, a woman named Sarah, noticed her slow movements. "You look dead," Sarah said, sliding bread trays into the oven. "I'm building something," Lena replied. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That container thing?" Lena didn't answer. She didn't want advice. She didn't want pity. But Sarah surprised her by lowering her voice. "My cousin does construction," Sarah said. "Not big jobs. Small repairs. Maybe he can tell you what's cheap and what's a trap." Lena paused. "Why would he help me?" Sarah shrugged. "Because he likes proving people wrong." That night, Lena called the cousin. His name was Imran. His voice was deep and impatient, like a man always in the middle of something. "A container home?" Imran repeated. "You serious?" "Yes," Lena said. He sighed. "Most people do it wrong. They cut holes without support, then the whole thing weakens." "I don't want to do it wrong," Lena replied. "I can pay a little for advice." "Not much." Imran was quiet. Then he said, "I'll come look. But I'm not working for free." "I understand," Lena said. After the call, Lena sat in the dark for a moment, listening to Sammy breathe in his sleep. Her fear was still there, but it was changing. It was turning into something sharper. Determination. The next few weeks became a routine. Lena worked mornings and nights, and every free hour went into the container. She hunted for cheap materials like it was a sport. She checked online listings late at night. She visited scrap yards. She asked questions at hardware stores until people got tired of her. Some days she found nothing. Other days she found treasure. A man selling used windows from a renovation offered 2 small ones for half price. Lena borrowed Mr. Qasim's old truck and picked them up. She held the windows like they were gold. Sammy watched her excitement. "They're just windows," he said. "They're light," Lena replied. "Light changes everything." When Lena carried them into the container, she held one up against the wall and imagined sunlight pouring in. It made her chest feel warm. But progress had an enemy: money. Every time Lena bought something, her bank balance shrank. Even small costs added up: screws, sealant, wood, tools she didn't have. Lena's savings were already thin from rent, food, and school supplies. One evening, she sat on the container floor with her notebook open, doing math again and again, trying to make the numbers nicer. They never got nicer. Sammy sat beside her, drawing. "Mom," he said, "are we going to run out?" Lena froze. Kids always knew, even when adults tried to hide it. She forced a smile. "We're okay." Sammy looked up. "You say that when you're worried." Lena's throat tightened. She reached out and pulled him close. "I am worried," Lena admitted. "But I'm not giving up." Sammy leaned into her shoulder. "Me too." For a moment, the container felt less like a project and more like a shelter, even unfinished. A week later, Imran came to inspect. He arrived in a dusty car, stepping out with the confidence of someone who had fixed things his whole life. He walked around the container, circling it slowly, like a doctor examining a patient. He stopped at the dented corner and clicked his tongue. "This is ugly," he said. "I know," Lena replied. Imran looked at her. "Why this one? Why not buy a better one?" "Because this is what I could afford," Lena said simply. Imran stared for a second longer, then nodded like he accepted that truth. He stepped inside, scanning the chalk lines and the windows Lena had collected. He crouched near the floor and knocked on the metal. "You need a proper raised base," he said. "Not just gravel. Concrete blocks, steel supports, something. Otherwise moisture will eat your work." "I can't afford a full concrete slab," Lena said. Imran rubbed his chin. "You can do blocks and beams. Cheaper. Still strong. I'll tell you what to buy." Lena's shoulders dropped in relief. Advice that was direct and useful felt like water in the desert. Imran moved to the wall. "You want windows here and here," he said, pointing. "Yes." He grabbed a marker and drew a rectangle outline. "When you cut, you must frame. Metal loses strength if you cut too much without reinforcement." Lena wrote that down too. Imran stood back and finally said, "It can be done." Those words hit Lena harder than she expected. It was the first time someone with real skill said it could actually work. After Imran left, Lena noticed something else. There were fewer neighbors watching now. At first, people came to stare like it was entertainment. But as weeks passed, the laughter faded. Not because they believed in her, but because the story stopped being funny. Lena kept showing up. She kept working. The container did not disappear. It did not collapse. It stood there like an argument. One afternoon, as Lena was measuring where the first window would go, a car stopped near the lot. A woman stepped out. Lena recognized her immediately. Her name was Nadia, a local realtor. She always dressed like she was going to an important meeting, even when buying vegetables at the market. Nadia walked over carefully, heels sinking slightly in the uneven ground. She looked at the container like it was a bad smell. "You're really doing this," Nadia said. Lena wiped sweat from her forehead. "Yes." Nadia crossed her arms. "You know this will lower property values around here." Lena blinked. This land was empty for years. Nadia's smile was thin. "Empty is better than this." Sammy, who was holding a screwdriver, stiffened. Lena felt anger rise, hot and sharp, but she held it back. "I'm not harming anyone," Lena said. Nadia stepped closer. People are concerned. They say it looks like a junkyard. Lena looked at the container, then at her tools, then at her son. It's not a junkyard, Lena replied. It's a home being built. Nadia's eyes narrowed. A home needs permits, electrical inspection, safety rules. Lena's stomach dropped. I'm following rules. Nadia reached into her purse and pulled out a card. Call this number. It's the municipal office. Better you talk to them before they come to you. Then she turned and walked back to her car, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and threat. For the rest of the day, Lena's hands shook. That night, she called the number. A tired-sounding man answered. Lena explained her container project, her plan, and her intention to connect utilities properly. The man sighed. Technically, he said, you need approval for structural modifications, especially if you cut openings for windows or doors. And living in it without inspections is not allowed. Lena's heart pounded. But I can't afford all the fees. There was a pause. There are programs, the man said. Low-income housing support. But paperwork takes time. Time was the one thing Lena did not have. She hung up and sat in silence. Sammy walked in from the tiny kitchen area of their rental room. What happened? Lena forced her face calm. Nothing, she said too quickly. Sammy's eyes were steady. It's not nothing. Lena rubbed her forehead. They might make it harder, she admitted. They might try to stop us. Sammy's lips pressed together. Then he said quietly, because they don't want us here. The words cut deep because they were simple and true. Lena pulled Sammy into a hug. Listen to me, she said, holding him tight. We are allowed to exist. We are allowed to have a home, even if people don't clap for it. Sammy nodded against her shoulder. The next day, Lena met Mr. Qasim early. She told him about Nadia and the municipal call. Mr. Qasim listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spit into the dirt and said, "They like rules when rules keep poor people quiet." Lena looked at him, surprised by his bluntness. He pointed at the container. "You do it clean. You do it right. But you don't stop." Lena's chest tightened. "What if they force me?" Mr. Qasim shook his head slowly. "They can delay you. They can scare you. But if you keep it safe and proper, it becomes harder to attack." He walked inside the container and tapped the wall. "You need proof. Receipts. Photos. Everything documented. That way, if someone lies, you show truth." Lena stared at him. "You really think they'll lie?" Mr. Qasim didn't answer. He didn't need to. From that day on, Lena took photos of everything. The cleaned floor. The marked lines. The windows. The materials. The base improvements. Each small step became evidence. Weeks passed. The weather grew hotter. The metal container turned into an oven during midday, forcing Lena to work early mornings and late afternoons. Imran returned to cut the first window openings. He brought a grinder, and the sound screamed through the air like angry insects. Neighbors peeked again. Not laughing now, but watching with new interest, like they could feel the project moving toward reality. Sparks flew as Imran cut a rectangle into the wall. Sammy stood far back, eyes wide, watching the metal slice open. When the metal piece finally fell outward, sunlight poured into the container through the new hole, bright and sharp. Lena stepped forward, stunned. For the first time, the inside did not feel like a cave. It felt like a room. Sammy smiled so wide his cheeks lifted. "It's real," he whispered. Imran wiped sweat from his neck. "Now frame it," he said, "before it warps." They built a wooden frame and secured it. It was not perfect, but it was solid. When they installed the window, Lena held her breath. Imran adjusted it carefully, sealing gaps. Then he stepped back. Sunlight came in through clean glass. Lena felt something inside her loosen. Like a knot she had carried for years was finally starting to untie. That evening, Lena sat on the container floor under the new window. She watched dust float in the light like tiny stars. Sammy sat beside her, legs crossed. "Mom," he said, "when we move in, can we have a plant?" "A plant?" Lena smiled. "Yes," Sammy said. "So it feels alive." Lena nodded. "We'll have a plant. Maybe two." Sammy leaned his head on her shoulder. "People won't laugh then." Lena looked out the window at the sky turning orange. "They might still laugh," Lena said softly. "Some people don't stop." Sammy frowned. "Then why are we doing it?" Lena turned to him. Her voice was calm, but there was fire under it. "Because our life is not a performance for them," she said. "And because one day, when they see what you and I built, they will understand something they refused to learn." Sammy blinked. "What?" Lena looked at the container walls, the tools, the window, the list in her notebook. "That starting over doesn't need permission from their opinions," she said. Outside, a car slowed on the gravel road. Lena watched through the window as it passed. She recognized the bright scarf woman who had laughed on delivery day. The woman stared at the container, then drove on without stopping. Lena exhaled. She knew the hardest part was still ahead: insulation, wiring, the bathroom, legal approvals, money. But now there was a window. And through that window, Lena could see something else too. Not just the hills in the distance. A future. And she could feel it building. The first night the lights turned on inside the container, Lena cried. It was not loud crying. It was the quiet kind that shakes your chest while you try to stay still. The small bulb above the kitchen area flickered once, then glowed steady. White light spread across the walls, bouncing off fresh insulation panels and unfinished wood frames. Electricity. It felt like a victory nobody could take away. Sammy clapped his hands. "It works. Mom, it really works." Lena wiped her face and smiled. "Yes, it does." The wiring had taken weeks. Lena saved money by working extra shifts and skipped meals without telling anyone. Imran supervised the work, correcting mistakes before they became dangerous. Every wire was placed carefully, every connection checked twice. They passed the first inspection. Not perfectly, but enough. When the inspector left, he looked around and said something Lena would never forget. "I've seen worse houses approved," he said. "At least this one is honest." That word stayed with her. Honest. As summer moved toward its end, the container slowly stopped looking like a container. Insulation covered the metal walls. Wooden panels softened the sharp edges. The floor was raised and layered, no longer cold steel. Lena painted the walls a warm off-white, the cheapest color she could find. Sammy painted one small section near his bed light blue, careful not to spill. They installed shelves made from old planks Mr. Qasim found behind his shed. The kitchen was small, but clean. A single sink, a hot plate, and storage that Lena measured again and again to avoid waste. The bathroom was the hardest. Plumbing nearly broke her budget. There were nights Lena sat on the container floor, staring at numbers, wondering which bill she could delay. She almost gave up on the shower idea. But Mr. Qasim surprised her again. He brought an old water heater and a used shower unit. "Not pretty," he said. "But it works." Lena stared at him, stunned. "Why are you helping me this much?" Mr. Qasim avoided her eyes. "Because people helped me once when I had nothing. Now it's my turn." Lena hugged him before he could stop her. By the time the first cool wind arrived, the container was ready. Not finished, not fancy, but ready. The night before they moved in, Lena and Sammy slept on the floor of the container with blankets and pillows. The walls still smelled faintly of paint. The window let in moonlight, soft and silver. Sammy whispered, "This feels different." "How?" Lena asked. "It doesn't feel borrowed," he said. Lena closed her eyes, letting that sink in. The next morning, they moved their few belongings from the rental room. It took only one trip. A mattress, clothes, books, kitchen items, and Sammy's drawing. Lena taped the drawing to the wall near the door. "This is our house." As they worked, cars slowed again. Neighbors watched. But this time, nobody laughed. They watched the window, the porch Lena built with scrap wood, the clean door, the small plant Sammy placed near the entrance. The container no longer looked abandoned. It looked cared for. Nadia drove by twice. The second time, she stopped. She stepped out, eyes scanning the changes. Her expression was different now. Less sharp. More confused. "You finished," Nadia said. "We moved in," Lena replied. Nadia hesitated. "It's better than I expected." Lena did not respond. Nadia cleared her throat. "People were worried. But it seems you handled it properly." Lena met her eyes. "I always planned to." Nadia nodded stiffly and walked back to her car. That evening, Lena cooked the first meal in their home. Simple rice and vegetables. Sammy set the table. They ate slowly, like they were afraid the moment might break if they rushed it. Then there was a knock. Lena froze. Sammy looked at her, eyes wide. "Who is it?" Lena stood and opened the door. It was the woman with the bright scarf. Up close, she looked older than Lena remembered. Her smile was nervous. "I live down the road," the woman said. "I saw you finished." "Yes," Lena replied carefully. The woman glanced behind Lena, into the container. Her eyes softened. "I wanted to say," she began, then stopped. "I was wrong." Lena did not speak. The woman sighed. "I laughed when they dropped this thing here. I thought it would be ugly forever." She looked at Sammy. "But you did something good." Sammy nodded politely. The woman held out a small box. "I baked this. Welcome." Lena accepted it slowly. "Thank you." After she left, Sammy whispered, "She said sorry." "Yes," Lena said. "That means we won," Sammy said. Lena smiled, but she knew the story was not finished yet. A week later, the town held its annual Open Community Day. Food stalls, music, and small local displays filled the park. Lena planned to stay home. She was tired, and crowds still made her uncomfortable. But Sarah from the bakery insisted. "You should come," Sarah said. "People need to see you." Lena hesitated, then agreed. When Lena arrived with Sammy, something felt strange. People looked at her. Not in the way they used to. Some whispered. Some smiled. A few nodded. Then Lena saw it. A small board near the entrance with photos pinned to it. The title read, "Local Projects and New Ideas." And there, among garden photos and school projects, were pictures of her container. Before and after. Lena's heart raced. Imran stood nearby, arms crossed, looking proud. "You didn't ask me," Lena said. He shrugged. Someone had to show them. People gathered around the board. "I thought it was trash," one man said. "Looks cozy now," said another. "Did she really build that herself?" someone asked. Lena stood there, feeling exposed and invisible at the same time. Then the municipal officer approached. The same tired man she spoke to on the phone weeks ago. "I visited your site," he said. Quietly. Lena's stomach dropped. And it meets safety standards," he said. "You did your paperwork. You documented everything." He smiled slightly. "That doesn't happen often." Lena exhaled for the first time in minutes. "We're considering using your project as an example," he continued. "Affordable housing ideas. Small, but smart." Lena blinked. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Very." That was when it happened. The laughter Lena remembered came back to her. The whispers. The messages. The looks. And now, those same people stood nearby, listening. The realization spread quietly. They had been wrong. Not because Lena was lucky, but because Lena was capable. Over the next weeks, things changed faster than Lena expected. A local paper ran a small story. Not flashy, just honest. It talked about a single mother, a container, and determination. People began visiting River Road, not to mock, but to learn. One man asked about costs. Another asked about insulation. A woman asked if Lena could help design something similar for her sister. Lena never planned to become an example. She just wanted a home. But now, her home was doing something else. One afternoon, Nadia returned. She stood at the porch, hands folded. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for trying to scare you." Lena listened. "I judged you," Nadia continued. "I thought you would fail. I was wrong." Lena nodded slowly. "Yes, you were." Nadia swallowed. "If you ever want to sell, I'd like to represent you." Lena smiled for the first time during that conversation. "I'm not selling," she said. Nadia looked surprised. "Not ever." Lena looked at Sammy, who was watering the plant near the door. "This house is not for sale," Lena replied. Winter arrived softly. The container stayed warm. The insulation worked. The heater worked. The small space felt safe instead of small. One night, Lena sat by the window, watching lights glow across the distant houses. Sammy did homework at the table, humming. "Mom," he said, "remember when they laughed?" "Yes," Lena said. "They don't laugh now," he said. Lena smiled. "No. Why?" Sammy asked. Lena thought for a moment. "Because they only understood strength when it looked like something they recognized," she said. "And you showed them strength can look different." Sammy nodded like that made sense. Months later, on the one-year mark, Lena stood outside her container home as the sun set behind it. The metal was almost hidden now under paint and panels. The rust was sealed, not erased, just controlled. People drove past and slowed for a different reason now. Respect. Lena touched the door handle, the same one that once refused to open. She remembered the laughter. And she remembered what came after. Not revenge. Not applause. But regret. The quiet kind. The kind people carry when they realize they judged someone who was building something they never had the courage to try. Lena stepped inside her home and closed the door. Inside, there was warmth. Inside, there was peace. And outside, the world finally understood something it should have known from the beginning. They did not laugh because the container was weak. They laughed because they could not imagine a woman like Lena turning something broken into something strong. And a year later, everyone regretted it.